Okay, so first one we're typing in. Again, double check your mode. Okay, I can see mine's in degree mode. If yours isn't, it's going to all come out wrong pretty much. Okay, so first we want cosine 0. Then we want cosine 90. Then we want cosine 180. Then we want cosine 270. So it's 1, 0, negative 1. Cosine 270 is 0. And then cosine 360 is back at 1. Okay, what we're going to do, okay, the next kind of thing we're doing with trig, because y'all know we're going to be on trig for a while, is that you're going to be graphing the sine and cosine curves. We're going to move them around, stretch them, shrink them, all that kind of stuff. So, for your parent graph, that's what we're graphing here on the first page. It's going to be y equals cosine x. And you're going to count on the x-axis by 90s. So this is going to obviously be 0. When I move over, I'll be at 90. Then I'll be at 180. Then 270, then 360. Okay, now if counting to the right is those positive numbers, then what about if I just count the other way? My x's would just be negative. So on this side, this is a negative 90. Negative 180, thank you. Negative 270. Negative 360. Hey. Okay, now I need you to type in this side. Write those 4 down. Doing test frictions. Okay, then write those 4 down, and then we're going to do a graph in a second. Just switch on her name. Those are just regular. If you need help graphing them, I can remind you of this one. Make sure you pick your Okay, so what was cosine negative 90? Did you type it in? What did we get? 0. What about cosine negative 180? Negative 1. What about cosine 270? And then last one. So what you should notice is that pretty much these came out the same. 90 and negative 90, they both gave me 0. 180, negative 180, they both gave me negative 1. Okay, then those both gave me 0, then those both gave me 1. That is the definition of an even function. So what an even function means, okay, cosine x is an even function. And what that means is that when I do the cosine of 90, it's the same as the cosine of negative 90. When I do the cosine of 50, it's going to be the same as the cosine of negative 50. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to sketch the graph using those points. So cosine of 0, what's my y value? 1. So at 0, let's put 1 here. Put a dot at 1. What is the cosine of 90 degrees? You just wrote it down. 0. What is the cosine of 180 degrees? Negative 1. So we'll bring it down here. Next one is 270. And then the next one after that goes back to 1. Okay, now we're going to go the other way. We're using the exact same dots. Okay, so negative 90, it's going to be at 0. Negative 180, it's going to be at negative 1. Next one's going to be back at 0. And then the last one's going to be back at 1. All of that makes sense? Okay, now when you connect your graph, I want you to do it so that you're making the shape of a cosine graph And have y'all looked at that graph before or no? No? So it would look like this. You would start up. You're going to go down, up, down, up, like that. That's what every cosine x graph is going to look like forever and ever and ever. Okay? It's just going to keep doing this the whole time. Okay? Okay, so what we're going to do now, we're going to do the notes a little bit out of order. Okay, hoping that maybe it'll make it a little bit easier. So we're going to practice shifting these around. So go ahead after you get that graphed and turn to this page right here. Okay, so we're going to skip the back side of that and we're going to jump to this page. So I'll give you one more minute looking at that if you need it. Good to turn it? Okay. Alright, so at the top, hopefully you remember what these numbers do. But you have a number here, and a number here. Now, you also have a B. Just ignore the B for right now. So, the A in the very front is going to affect whether you have a vertical compression or stretch. Okay, do we remember the cutoff when it switches from a compression to a stretch? 1. Compression means smaller than 1. Okay, and then a stretch means bigger than 1. So I'm going to put here, it will be a compression when A is less than 1. It will be a stretch when A is greater than 1. Okay, the next number that we're going to look at is going to be the minus C. The number in here is going to control whether you shift your graph left or right. Now, there's something very important about your number x. Because it's in parentheses, it's always going to do the opposite of what you would have thought. So, for example, if it's a minus 10, I'm actually going to the right. If it's a plus, I'm actually going to the left. Hopefully you remember that from graphing other shapes. So I'm going to put a little star here. I'm going to put opposite. Okay, because that's always going to do the opposite of what you would have thought it would do. Okay? Then the last number, D, do you remember what that one controls? Good. Okay, that is going to shift your graph up or down. Okay, but notice that that number is not in parentheses, so if it's plus, I go up. If it's minus, I go down. Okay? So, take a look at number 1. Okay, my phase shift is my x shift. I see a minus 10 in here. Which way am I going to shift my graph? To the right, 10. And then my vertical shift is this plus 3, which is going to be up 3. So first we're going to start just with that. So I'm going to call this first mark 10 degrees. Now, it is much easier when we graph these for us to shift this first point and then just draw the y-axis wherever we need it to be. So, for example, if this is 10 degrees, where would the y-axis be? The right side or the left side? It'd be a little bit to the left, right? So here's 0. Okay, that's the y-axis. Now, do you remember what we counted by on the x-axis? Do you remember what it went up by? It was 90, 180, 270, 360. What was that counting up by each time? 90. So we're going to keep that the same. So if I start at 10 and I add 90 degrees, what is the next mark? 100. Okay, then I'm going to go 90 past that. Yes, sir? Yeah. Okay, go 90 past 100. What's the next mark? 190. Okay, plus 90 from there. And this is where I had you get a calculators for this stuff. Okay, so if I'm at 190 and I add 90 more, what does that put me at? 280 plus 90 more. What's my next one? 370 plus 90 more. What's my next one? Okay, so you're just going to continue marking the x-axis like that. So 280, 370, 460, 550, and then last one, 730. Okay, so I'm going to mark that next. Then I need to shift my entire graph up 3 units. So, count up 3. 1, 2, 3. This is my new middle of my graph. Okay, then the last thing that you have to mark is going to be the highest point and the lowest point on your graph. Now, flip back over to the first page. What was the highest that the graph went on the parent function? It went from 1 to negative 1, 1 to negative 1, 1 to negative 1. That's it. So if I multiply that by a stretch of 4, how high is it going to go now? Up 4, down 4, up 4, down 4. So think about, if I'm here, this is 3, remember, and I go up 4, what would that put me at up here? 7. Now, what if I start back at 3, but this time I'm going to count down 4. So I'd be at 3, I'd go down 1, 2, 3, 4. What's that down there? Negative 1. Now, in yellow, I'm going to very lightly put a line here. Okay, that's the top and the bottom of the graph. My graph should never go higher than 7. It should never go lower than negative. Oops, I put a 7. What was that supposed to be? That should have been a negative 1. Okay. Now, remember at the beginning, okay, that my graph at 0 starts up, right? And then it goes middle, down, up, middle. Okay, so that's what we're going to do here. So at 10, I'm at the middle. Do this with me or it's going to be confusing. Oh, wait, crap. No. Where do we say we are? We start up. So I should start at 7. My bad. Then you're going to go to the middle. So at 100 degrees, you should be at the center. Okay, then at 90 degrees, I should be down on the yellow line. Then I'm going to, at 280, be back at the middle. Then at 370, I'm going to be back up high. Then at 460, I'll be back in the middle. Then I'll be down at 550, back at the middle at 640, and then back up at 730. And then all you have to do from there is connect your little wavy graph. So look, I was up, middle, down, middle, up, middle, down, middle, up. That's it. So you're moving the graph around, maybe you're making it taller, but it should follow that same shape. Up, middle, down, middle, up, middle, down, middle, up. Every time, that's what cosine should do. Okay, we'll talk about the amplitude in a second, but for right now, let's go ahead and graph number 2. Okay? So, first thing on number 2, take a look at the next graph. Which way am I going to shift the graph if there's a minus 30 here? Which way are we going to shift it if there's a minus 30? To the right 30 degrees. Because remember, that one's in parentheses, then it's always the opposite. So that means that this first is going to be 30 degrees, which means the y-axis is still over here. What am I counting by on the x-axis? Same as last time, 90s. So if I do 30 plus 90, what's my next step? 120 plus 90 again. 210, then after that, 300. So we're just going to label our x-axis. So 120, 210, 300. What would come after 300? 390. Next one? 480, 570. Next one would be 660, and then 750. Okay, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to look for my new center. Which way am I going to vertically shift my graph if I have a -2 here at the back? Down 2. So count down 2. This is my new center. Here I'm going to call it the middle. That's the middle of my new trig graph. And then normally your graph goes up 1, down 1, up 1, down 1. But this time I have a half in the front. What is that going to do to how high my graph goes? Instead of going up 1, it's only going to go up a half. And then instead of going down 1, it's only going to go down a half. Okay? So, I want you to think about real quick. If this is -2, and I go up a half, where would I be at on the graph? -1.5, which would be here. So I'll put -1.5. Or if you would like to put -1.5, that's fine. Okay, now what if I went down another half? Where would I be at? -2.5. So here is -2.5. And then I'm going to draw in my lines to show me where the highest points should be at, where the lowest points should be at. And then remember that your cosine graph always starts up. So my first dot is going to be here, high. Then where does it go next? Middle. Then where does it go next? Low. Then it goes back to middle, then high, then middle, then low, then middle, then high, then middle, then low. Does that make sense? It's the exact same pattern every time once you set out kind of like that map. So I'm going to start here. Then I'm going to go to the middle at 120. Then I'm going to go down at 210. Then I'll be back middle at 30. Then I'll be high at 390. Back middle at 480. Low at 570, middle at 660, high at 750. And then once you graph that, you're just connecting your wave. So it would be like that. Okay? Now, the other thing I want to do is go back and fill these in because I forgot to do it. What was my vertical shift? How did we move it? Down 2. Did I have a stretch or a compression if I had a 1/2 in the front? Compression. And then the last thing we have to talk about is the amplitude. Okay, we're going to talk more about that when we turn over the page. But the amplitude is the highest minus the lowest y value. So for example, okay, let's come back to this graph right here and find the amplitude. What is the highest that the graph goes? 7. How far is it to -1? Careful. If it was 7 to 1, it would be 6. But if I'm going all the way to -1, how many units is that? 8. Here's the easiest way to count. How many did I have to count up? 4. How many would I have to count down? 4. Then what's the total amplitude? 8. So think about if it's 4 above the middle and then 4 also below the middle, then your amplitude is always just going to be twice how far you counted up or down. Okay, so now let's do the same thing on this one. How far did I count up? Only a half. How far did I count down? Only a half. Well, then what's a half plus a half? An amplitude of 1. So that is how wide up and down your little squiggly is. Make sense? Yes? Here's why. If I do 7 minus negative 1. Think about what happens when I do 7 minus negative 1. Negative 1 turns into a plus, and that's where the 8 comes from. So if you want to do top minus bottom, you can, but just remember that if I do 7 minus negative 1, that actually gives me a plus and still gives me 8. So you can do it either way, it doesn't matter. Okay, before we keep going, we're going to do one of your homework questions. So, take a look at your homework. Notice that this is a sign. We have not covered those yet, so flip over to the back side. And we're going to do this one, but I want you to cross out the 3 in here, because we have not covered that number yet. Okay, so we're going to do number 3. Okay, so first thing, which way is my graph going to be shifted? I have theta minus 110. Which way am I going to shift? To the right, how many? 110 degrees. So my first one is going to be 110. What am I going to count by? Same as last time. 90. So what's 110 plus 90 for my next marker? 200. Okay, then add 90 again. What am I going to go up by? 290. Then I'm going to count up by 90 again. It would be 380. 470. 560. Then 740. Then last one. 830. Good? Now, if this is 100 degrees, where's the y-axis? Way back over here, right? So I'm just going to draw it in. If this is 100 degrees, we'll say the y-axis is here. Okay? Now, this is a little bit weird, but my up and down number usually is back here. Do you see they just wrote it at the front? So a minus 7 in the front or the back does the same thing. Which way does it shift the graph, up or down? Okay, this is going to shift the graph down 7. So I'm going to say negative 7 is here. This is the middle of the graph. Okay, then I want to look in front of cosine to see if there is a stretch or a compression. Is there a number here? Then do I have one of those? No. So, since there's no number in the front here, there is no stretch or compression. So that means instead of going up like 2 or 3, it's only going to go up how far? 1, just like the regular graph. So if I go up 1 from negative 7, what does that put me at? Negative 6. What about if I go down 1 from negative 7? Negative 8. That's going to be the top and the bottom of my graph. It should never go above negative 6. It should never go below negative 8. And then all that you have to do is count carefully. Remember that cosine starts at the top. So I'll put my first dot here. Then I'll go middle. Then I'll go low. Then I'll go middle. Then I'll go high. Then I'll go middle. Then I'll go low. Then middle. Then high. You know what I mean? Yeah? So same thing. So you'll start high at 110, middle at 200, low at 290, middle 380, high at 470, etc. And then once you draw your 8 dots, you're just connecting the cosine graph. Now, how far is my amplitude if I went up 1 and down 1? What's the total width? 2. Make sense? Okay, good. Now we're going to do the exact same thing for the sine graph, okay? So come back to your notes and go to the page that we skipped, which is this page right here. Okay, and you're going to notice very similar things about your sine graph. So in the calculator, we're going to type in sine of 0 is 0. Then we're going to find the sine of 90, which is 1. Sine of 180 is 0. Sine of 270 is negative 1. And then sine of 360 is back at 0. So this is 90, 180, 270, 360. This is negative 90, negative 180, negative 270, negative 360. And then I'm going to place each of those points, but notice that this time my graph doesn't start at 1. What was sine of 0? 0. And then at 90, where was I at? 90, I'm at 1. And then at 180, I'm at 0. And then at 270, I'm at negative 1. And then at 360, I'm at 0. So what you're going to notice is it's the same graph. It's just kind of like shifted to where it curves a little differently. So I'll still go up, down, up. And now we can do the other side. So sine negative 90 gives me negative 1. Sine negative 180 gives me 0. Sine negative 270 gives me 1. And then what's the last one of sine negative 360? 0. So let's go through and sketch our little dots, and then we'll shift this one around. So negative 90 was at negative 1. 180 was back at 0. 270 was back at 1. 360 was back at 0. And then I can just kind of like continue my graph over. So this is y equals sine x. Okay, but the most important thing to know about the difference is that in the middle, sine starts at 0. Cosine, where did it always start? Up at 1, or whatever the highest point is. Okay? So, take a look back at your homework. We're going to do the very first one. Okay? So, we're going to do the very first one on your homework here. Okay, I have a plus 50 degrees. How does that shift my graph? To the left or to the right? To the left 50 degrees. And if I go to the left, that means that my first one is actually negative 50 degrees. Now remember, what am I still jumping by each time? 90. So what's negative 50 if I add 90 for my next marker? So it'd be 40, right? You'd have negative 50 plus 90 gives me 40. Then I'll add 90 again. That gives me 130. Then I'll add 90 again. That gives me 220. 90 again gives me 310. 90 again would be 400. 90 again would be 490. 580. 670. Now, quick question. This is the first time that we've had one of these. If my first marker is negative 50 and this is 40, where should the y-axis be? Over here still? Where would 0 be? In between those. Okay, so it doesn't have to look perfect, but your y-axis should be where 0 would have been. So I want to put it between the negative 50 and the 40. Okay, from there, which way am I going to vertically shift my graph? So the number that's usually back here, but where is it now? Right there in the front, but that's okay. It's a positive 5, so I'm shifting my whole graph up 5. So put in up 5, and we'll say 5 is here. That's my center or my middle. Now, if there's a number here, then I would have a stretch or a compression. But do I have one here? Then I don't have one of those. So I'm going to put no stretch or compression. I'm just going to put no stretch because it's shorter. Okay, so and if it's not stretch, then how high does it go? Only up 1 and only down 1. So if I'm at 5, what is up 1 from 5? 6. And what is down 1 from 5? 4. Okay, then draw in your top and bottom lines. That's the highest it can go. That's the lowest it can go. Yeah, that's great. And then from there, where does my first dot go? Cosine, it always starts high. But where does sine start? At 0. So my very first dot for negative 50 is going to be here at the center. And then at 40, it will be up. And then at 130, it will be center. At 220, it will be low. Then middle at 310, high at 400. Middle at 440, low at 580, middle at 670. So remember, sine starts in the middle. Cosine starts high. Other than that, you're just following the same pattern over and over again. What is the period if I went up 1 and I went down 1? What's the total period? 2. Make sense? Okay, you are not going to finish the homework, but we're going to finish the last problem in your notes. So come back to this last one right here. Okay, which way am I going to shift it? I see a plus 20 degrees in the middle. To the left 20 degrees. Very good. That makes the first dot negative 20. What am I going to do from there? Add 90. What's negative 20 plus 90? 70. Add 90 is 160. Add 90 is 250. Yup. 430. What's the next one? 520. Yup. And then add 90 one more time. 700. Okay, next question. Where does 4 start? Where does that move my graph? Up or down? That's going to move it up 4. So I'm going to put, oops, I forgot my y-axis. Where should my y-axis go? In between. Okay, if that's negative 20 and that's 70, then my y-axis should be between them, not over here. And then I'm going to put negative or positive 4 on my graph. That's my new middle. At 4. Next question. The number in the front here is a 3. Is that a, don't ignore the negative. Is that a stretch or a compression? 3. 3 is a stretch. So if I'm at 4 and I'm going to go up 3, what would that put the top of my graph at? 7. So we'll say that 7 is here. What about if I went down 3 from 4? Where would that put me? 1. So my graph should stay between 7 when it's up 3 and 1 when it's down 3. Where does sine always start? Since this is a sine graph, does it start up or middle? Starts at the middle, so put your first dot. Negative 20 degrees, it should be in the middle. Normally, where does the next dot go? Normally it goes up, but do you see this negative? What do you guess you're going to do to it? Just go down first. So I'm going to start here. Because of this negative in the front, it's going to go down first. So I'm going to go from here to a low, then a middle, then a high, then a middle, then a low, middle, then a high, back to middle. So it's going to take your graph and it's just going to flip it upside down. But all of the other rules still apply. You're still going up 3 and then down 3. Now, what would my amplitude be if I'm going 3 up and 3 down? What's my full amplitude? 6. Does that make sense? Because you have a 3 distance up. This is 3. And, oops. And then you have a 3 distance down. Okay? So you're going to get a homework for this tomorrow. You don't have to do your homework tonight. You can keep it if you want the example. Okay? Okay, you have about 10 minutes.